It is the day, 6th July 2020. So the unprecedented measures that the economy is operating under right now are going to expire midnight today. So now we are sure that the president is going to address the nation today. So the debate is on, should he reopen the economy or not? All right, now, so once the unprecedented measures that were extended a month ago by President Uhuru Kenyatta to curb the spread of the coronavirus has become heated as the extension period expires today. Now, in what economic analysts are now calling a catch-22 situation for the president owing to the rising numbers of COVID-19 cases in the country and the pressure of a depressed economy, it now seems like the president is faced with the hardest decision since the first case of the coronavirus was reported in the country on March 16th this year. Economic analysts speaking after the Treasury and the tourism sector call on the president to reopen the economy. They admit that it will be a tough balancing act for the president, but maintain that he has to pick one side. Now, the president is expected to address the country today, Monday 6th, 2020, after the expiry of the current measures. This morning, we are joined by Stephen Gikonyo. Talk to us 2146 at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. Mr. Gikonyo, does he have to pick one side?
He doesn't have to pick one side. I think the Minister of Health has done a great job to tell us to clean our hands, sanitize our hands, wash our hands, and also to wear a mask and keep social distance, etc. So we are well versed in that and we're practicing it. So I see us continuing to do that, but at the same time, I don't see us succeeding in having the economy shut down. In other words, we would prefer that people are allowed to go and do what they do normally.
Interesting point you raised, therefore, because as you said that the Minister of Health has told us to wash our hands, put on your mask, stay at home if you don't have to go out. But now here is a case where we're saying, put on your mask, but you don't gotta stay at home. Go out and work because the economy is depressed. Either way, aren't we therefore saying that for Kenya, especially the hotspots that we do know, that washing our hands, putting on the face masks, the curfew hasn't just worked? So are we saying now, I mean, we gotta do it regardless?
I think so. Because what's the greater evil, if you will? People to die at home because they're hungry and they don't have their livelihoods, or to die because of a disease that we cannot prevent. You know, the reason I'm saying that is this. We now know from the latest information that's coming about this disease is that it is airborne. That's what we're being told.
Yes.
So it's not so much on the surfaces and in the spaces that we're in, but it's in the air that we breathe. And therefore, more people are expected to get infected. So what would you rather have? We've seen people are recovering. We've seen people of course, there's people who are dying, but don't take away the person's ability to earn a living. Don't cause the person to be thrown out of their house, as we've seen, you know, because they cannot pay their rent. There needs to be multiple interventions. It's not just simply open or don't open. There needs to be multiple interventions.
Yes.
Yes.
So are we saying today that the only thing that we expect the president to say is that just because of what we've seen in a couple of days for the last 30 days, that we gotta come up with ways of living with it? Is that what we're saying?
Absolutely. You see, one of the greatest punishments for humanity is imprisonment.
Yes.
Or the lack of liberty. And that is what happens when you have curfews and you have restrictions in movement, etc., etc. So people are feeling the pressure. And not just the pressure of not having to go. We are kind of getting used to not leaving Nairobi or coming into the city and so on. However, you can't get used to not having money. You can't get used to not buying the food that you need to buy. So we have to look at that as a greater danger, if you will, because clearly even with the numbers around the world, everybody's not going to die. Yes, a lot of people are going to die. A lot of people will get sick. But we need to now start looking at that data that we have available from around the world and say, what is it telling us? What can we extract out of it so that we make informed decisions?
Pretty much, Gikonyo, I'm just going to leave it there because I know I'll call you back once he's made that announcement so we can actually get to talk about it.
Sure.
In the sense that, so what next?
Yes.
All right, now let's talk about the levels of employment in the country that have dropped in May to the slowest for 3 months, according to Stanbic Bank Kenya's latest PMI report. Now, the decline has been attributed to a rise in export orders since February as trade with Europe strengthened. At the same time, overall cost pressures fell for a second month running due to growing salary cuts. Now, the report also states that the Kenyan private sector economy registered a further deterioration in business conditions during June as output and new orders declined again in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. However, the deterioration is noted to have eased considerably from May, mainly driven by relaxed curfew measures and a recovery in sales at several businesses. On the other hand, relaxed measures in Europe led to a slight improvement in the export demand that was the first since February. However, firms still saw a drop in customer demand overall due to a reluctance to travel. Now, the outlook for business activity worsened again in June, dropping to the weakest since August 2016. Fine. Question this morning, Ben, is that which sectors and industries are these that are contributing to a faster turnaround in unemployment numbers in the economy? Now, the report also indicates that the relaxation of curfew helped businesses recover. Is this the more reason to reopen the economy? And what extra measure can the government take to accelerate a turnaround in unemployment in the country as a result of COVID-19? Yes, but as we are going to see, again, it's not like we're talking about a turnaround. It's not like we're talking about a rebound. We're talking about an ease in terms of job losses for the past 3 months. So what do you think are these sectors and businesses that are sort of giving us these good numbers in terms of employment?
I don't know that I can read those numbers.
Yes.
I think this is a situation where we've spoken too soon in terms of having some positive indications.
Yes.
The impact of those numbers has got to be small because the reality is that most people have lost their jobs, most people are working less hours, most people are earning less than they were prior to the lockdown. And so even if certain sectors have gone up, and I'd be interested to know which ones, it's not significant. It cannot be significant.
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Patrick Njoroge will tend to disagree with you. And I'll tell you what he did last week. He said, well, I'm going to revise my growth projections for 2020 because apparently remittances, they didn't drop. I mean, we didn't have a 20.5% increase. And if you look at exactly our exports, they also did increase. So sort of saying, because of this relaxation in curfews and the way in which we've been able to go around the coronavirus pandemic, giving people long working hours during the day, that we do have a glimpse of hope in terms of our economy projections.
Absolutely. You relax the restrictions. Of course, people go out and look for work to do.
Yes.
They sell fruit and so on and so forth. Also in the other economies, especially where we export our flowers, etc., perhaps there's orders coming in for the flowers. But it's too soon to look at that information and say we are doing good.
Yes.
The impact of this shutdown will be known in the next several months. The next 6 months is when we'll see what it is. Because the economy, you cannot just start and stop, or stop and start. It takes time to revamp. It needs a ramping period.
Nice.
And so now we're seeing the decline, and people, even with the opening up of the economy, are not going to go back and get back to full swing.
Yes.
Because the spending capital or the spending money is not there. So what you're going to see is a gradual rise. And then there's still the threat of the resurgence of the illness. When the numbers go up, what are the officials going to tell us? Stay home, don't leave, etc. That's likely to happen. So we need to really sit down and make a decision on how we are going to deal with it.
Pretty much. So when you're looking at these numbers, therefore, Mr. Gikonyo, this morning, is that reason enough for you to say, maybe we need to reopen now?
Absolutely. Because I'll give you an example. A neighborhood restaurant that normally has 14 people working as staffers, cashiers, barista, the cooks, and the waiters and waitresses, as well as security. They've gone down to 3 people over the last 3 months. The impact of that, or when you extrapolate that across the economy and across all the various businesses that have been so affected, you're talking about a whole lot of people. So anyone that doesn't see or feel what the common Mwananchi is feeling is missing the big picture, because that's where the real impact is.
Yes,
yeah,
pretty much. Now, I just want us to continue discussing about this, because there's another report now that the Labor Department has this morning that is sort of going to negate what the PMI for Stanbic report actually did indicate. Now, the government has revealed that it has received 300,000. Now, wait for that, redundancy requests through the Kenya National Employment Authority since the onset of COVID-19. It equally estimates that over 1.2 million Kenyans have lost their jobs following the adverse effects of the pandemic on the economy. According to the Labour Cabinet Secretary, Simon Cheluki, much as the bulk of the job seekers are absorbed by the informal sector, the level of unemployment remains high. Now, Chelugui made these remarks during the launch of the Informal Sector Skills Report by the Ministry of Labour and Social Protection in conjunction with the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and the World Bank. Now, the Jubilee government could lose all its formal jobs created under the administration as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Question being, in what way must they act now to salvage the situation? And how can their spending be realigned in 2020-2021 to spur job creation? The thing about these numbers again is that even as the Labour Department gives them to you, they're saying could. So this morning we're assuming that the numbers are more. So that means that whatever the Jubilee government has done for the last, I would say, 8 years, is being wiped off. Just like that.
yes.
Do you think that they have a way to turn this around with just one budget cycle left? Because they've already planned how to spend this one. So if they're going to do something, it's going to be 2022.
The Jubilee administration has to go back and rethink its strategy on the economy, because clearly a wrench has been thrown in the mortar. The numbers that you've just spoken of reflect the reality on the ground. Those are people who are going to lose their jobs if they haven't already lost their jobs. And the reason they're losing their jobs is because we do not have the economic activity that has driven this nation. It has pretty much been interrupted by the pandemic. And therefore, this is going to continue, because as I say it again, you don't stop and start the economy. It takes a while to start revamping, people feeling secure, getting their incomes back in place, and spending. So there's a real challenge. So really, it behooves them, or our government, to go back and review what plans they had and what adjustments they need to make immediately to forestall the effects, or at least reduce the effects of the pandemic on the economy.
If you were seated right now where Uhuru Kenyatta is seated and going through this report from the Labour Department saying, wow, you know, you have lost 1.2 million jobs so far, and we might be getting more, and we already have 300,000 redundancy requests, meaning that these are companies that are saying, we are on our knees, we don't need these people, we don't have the money for them.
Precisely.
We could just assume this morning that they have lost their jobs as well.
Yes.
That's a redundancy request. It's
Yes.
upon you to make a decision to let them go. Where would you start from? Would you go back and say, let's cut back, but where do you want to cut back from?
It's a tough situation to be in as the president, because on one hand you'll be blamed if the pandemic increases. On the other hand, you'll be blamed when the economy tanks. So I wouldn't worry too much about what people will think.
Yes.
But I must find a solution to the problem, and therefore it's not one or the other. It's both. You gotta fix both.
You gotta fix both, but it looks like it's going to be fixed, Gikonyo, this morning. And I want to point you out to where Uhuru Kenyatta and his Jubilee government draw inspiration from in terms of job creation, the Big Four agenda. You saw what happened the other day, 128 billion only from 450 billion the year before.
Yes.
I mean, you can't say that you have a way out when it looks as if you have no way out.
Well, you do have a way out. You can, just
Yes.
as we are lowering the curve, if you will,
Yes.
or reducing the curve, you can do the same thing on the economy.
Yes.
We've seen what we've done,
Yes.
and its effect is quite obvious. The number of people who've been affected directly so far
Yes.
by the disease are still manageable relative to the impact to the vast numbers of people on the economy. So you really cannot hold the economy back anymore because people are going to get sick. You don't have that choice. You have to let people go do what they can to provide for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, when people cannot provide for themselves, they get desperate, you know, and that can make them sick.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I get you, sir. I mean, it looks like a man who has to do one thing or the other.
Yes.
Fantastic. Now, finally, the nominee for the Auditor General position, Nancy Janet Kabui Gathungu. She has vowed to uphold integrity in the conduct of her job should she be confirmed for the position. She further has undertaken to ensure that risk analysis is done from time to time to seal all the loopholes of corruption. Nancy told the National Assembly Committee on Finance and Planning last week that she will take action against those found abetting corruption under the law. Let's leave it there. She wants to fight corruption. That's the biggest promise that she has. But she has a backlog. It's huge. And is it a promise to get to that office, or indeed we can look back at his at the predecessor, that is Oko, and say that guy fought corruption. So Nancy is coming from somewhere when she says, I'm going to fight corruption. Or is it just office speak?
Well, you see, the role of the Auditor General is to look how money was spent vis-a-vis what it was allocated for.
Yes.
And it is in those gaps that you find something went wrong.
Yes.
And we generally call it corruption. So she will definitely find gaps. But what the Auditor General's office needs, or its role, is not to fight corruption. It is to audit and see where the money went. And then the EACCs and Parliament and Senate, etc., are the ones who go back and say, okay, we find there's a gap. Can you come and explain what happened? And it's in that explanation that you find that money was either misappropriated or reallocated elsewhere and so on. So as long as she does what Ouko did, and she's very capable, having worked as a director in the audit office,
Yes.
then we'll get to see what happened to the monies, and people will have to explain what they did with it. So she has a key role to play
Yes.
in the fight against corruption,
Yes.
but cannot singularly fight corruption.
We're looking at it as if she comes from an insider position within that office.
Yes.
Do you think that gives her the enough expertise she needs to go for these people who are sort of not spending the money the way they're supposed to be spent?
I believe so. She's well qualified.
How would you rate Oko's performance?
I think he did well. You know, in that time, we had the opposition and the administration.
Yes.
And most of the time, it was suspected that what Ouko was bringing forth was at the behest of the opposition.
Yes.
But the guy himself, ever smiling, presents the numbers as they are, was seldom challenged on what he presented. He was apolitical. And so perhaps there were things going on that needed to be exposed by the Auditor General's office, but it was viewed through the prism of politics.
Yes.
And so sometimes he would get criticized and sometimes even ridiculed. And sometimes he made mistakes, like suggesting that he would go to the U.S. the federal government and so on.
Say that.
You know,
Yes.
he's human.
Yes.
But he did a good job.
It did a good job.
Yeah.
So would you say, therefore, that Nancy's big challenge, we do expect her to get confirmed. I mean, we did see how president's appointments do go.
Yes.
That her big challenge is just going to be the backlog that has been caused by the over 11 months that we haven't had somebody in our office.
I would hope that there are people working in the office, as much as you don't have the principle that there's people working on that, and therefore the backlog may not necessarily be that
Yes.
big.
Yes.
But she has to develop thick skin. She can't hide behind a hookah anymore or do the work in the back room. She's now in the front.
Yes.
And they'll come after her.
Pretty much, man. Gikonyo, we have to call you back, man. So we talk about what the president is going to talk about this today.
Yes.
We don't know what time it's going to be,
Yeah.
but we do expect him to address that.
Absolutely.
All right, that is Stephen Gikonyo for you. Take him back to the time that he came to the studio. He's saying, when it comes to job losses and the reopening of the economy, you gotta do something about it. And he's painting the picture that the president does know that it's time to do something about it. You can't keep on telling people stay at home when they're hungry. That is saying, where they're hungry, they get angry. That is on YouTube at Metropole TVKE, across all your social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter. Keep the messages coming in. 2146, that's 20146. I am at Charles_Kiage. Now, once we come back, let's look at exactly how the insurance sector is performing now, when we are talking about some businesses never having to come back after this.